You're listening to the Coaching Cast podcast with Susie and Lisa. We are super lucky to have this 7th season sponsored by our friend and YouTube's top breath coach, Mike Mayer from Take a Deep Breath. Mike is the first official sponsor of this podcast and specialises in reducing stress and anxiety through practical, fun and science-based breathing techniques. You can get started for free by clicking on the link in the show notes and downloading a free guided audio breathing exercise from Mike. Say goodbye to stress and hello to a more relaxed and chilled state of mind. And if you're interested in being a sponsor on this podcast, you can contact us by emailing hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk. Hi, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Susie, and this is the Coaching Cast. We are the No Nonsense podcast, chatting about the things impacting you at work right now, helping you to survive and thrive in today's ever-changing workplace.
We discuss different topics each episode, sharing our ideas, hints and top tips from our experiences of working in the corporate world, running our own businesses and also being qualified coaches. We also try to have a few laughs along the way because taking yourself too seriously is just boring. We hope you enjoy listening. In today's episode, we're talking about delegation, why it's important in order for us to thrive at work, why we often find it difficult to do and just let go, how this can negatively impact others, and how we can do it better. So stay with us and enjoy. So before we get into today's topic on delegation, Suze, how have you been?
Oh, well, I've got the leg. So
The leg.
I've got the leg, yeah. I've not been very well for about a week now. It's quite annoying. So hopefully my voice is going to hold out for this episode.
Well, it can make it very interesting. Get some special effects going.
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, listen on, CB Biz, to see if my voice lasts. So yeah, not been feeling tip top, shall we say? But I'm here. I'm present. Hopefully my voice holds up, and I can add and contribute to this episode. But yeah, I've been feeling a bit unwell, which is annoying. Do you find when you don't feel very well, when you feel under the weather, it's just more annoying than anything?
Yes, I find it extremely inconvenient.
Yeah.
I'm not a good sick person. I don't like my life being put on hold and not feeling able to do the things I do day to day. So I get really, really angry and frustrated.
Yeah.
And I can even get to the stage where, like, I don't cry very often. Not that I'm critiquing crying. I think it's very valid to cry and very freeing, but it's usually the only time I cry is when I feel ill, and it's because I'm so frustrated I cry, which is more often the reason why I cry about anything. It's because I'm frustrated and I feel angry. I don't feel like I can express my emotions in an articulate way, so I just cry out of sheer annoyance. And so yeah, I cry when I'm sick because I'm annoyed I'm sick. So
I might try that this afternoon, like just get all the frustration
get all
out.
the frustration out.
Cry.
Yeah, have a good old cry. Although,
cry.
depending on what you're sick with, clearly if you've got a cold, it's really gross if you cry as well. I mean, like you need any more snot in your life, and then there's just loads of it. It's like it's pouring out of everywhere. So it's pretty gross.
I know. It's my birthday tomorrow as well.
I know. It's Susie's birthday tomorrow, everybody. We need to will her better. I mean, obviously, if you're listening to this episode, depending on when you listen to it, by tomorrow, we're referring to, what's the date tomorrow, Suze? This is terrible. Wednesday, the 8th of February. Wednesday, the 8th of February. So, yes, obviously, by the time you listen to this episode, it will be beyond the 8th of February. But
it will be.
Give you an update on how Susie's birthday actually turned out. Hopefully,
because we all know I haven't got a good track record of birthday.
No, gosh. Let's try and keep you out of the hospital this year.
Yeah, so last year was okay, but the year before, when we just launched the Coaching Cast, I spent my birthday in hospital.
Yes, that was a pretty bad time with your erupted appendix.
With the erupted appendix, which will legendary live on.
Yes.
So yeah, fingers crossed I can kind of pull it together for tomorrow.
But totally.
And
But don't
yeah.
don't worry about the voice for today's recording, because you're only human and it happens to the best of us. Did you not see over the weekend with the Six Nations coverage, Hugo Monye struggling with his
No.
hiccups? He
No, I
had
missed
severe
this.
hiccups all the way through
Did he?
yeah, and he was leading the discussion about the match. I can't remember which match it was, whether it was Saturday or Sundays. I'm assuming he was commentating on the England-Scotland game, first game of the Six Nations. Well, not first game for us of the Six Nations tournament that happened at the beginning of February. And he had really bad hiccups all the way through, which I thought was brilliant. Yeah, just hiccuped constantly.
Oh, wow.
Because I suppose it's one of these things when you're a professional, you can't, I would have just been like, Ugo, just hold your breath, swallow while holding your nose. But he obviously didn't have time to do that. So yeah.
Well, when you're
hilarious.
a professional, I'm not sure we hit that audio broadcasting level yet of being a professional.
Come on.
Although we are, like, I've realised last night, because I was doing an Instagram post. So we are on Instagram as well, if you didn't know this and you're listening to
at the Coaching Cast, anyone who's keen to go check us out on Instagram.
Yeah, so it was our birthday, wasn't it? As well
as
being my birthday tomorrow, but it was also the podcast's birthday. So we're now 2 years old.
I know, isn't that mad? 2 years.
Crazy. Gosh. And did you know we've done 63 episodes?
I did think we must be over 50 by now, because we celebrated our 50th episode in season, was that season 5, wouldn't it? It would have been season 5 when we had a lovely collection of RC BBs join us. So I was thinking we must have gone over 60 by now. So yeah, I'm glad you're keeping track of the stats as always, rather than me. That's your strong point, not mine. I just show up every week and hope for the best.
Well, so do I, to be honest. But we've done that for 63 episodes now.
Yay! So happy second birthday to us.
65 by the time this goes out, actually.
Excellent.
So
excellent. Yeah, check us out.
So birthdays all round.
Yes,
birthdays all round.
Yeah, happy birthday to us and happy birthday to you for tomorrow. Whatever that may look like. Hopefully you'll feel better. Hopefully you'll feel better. Well, so today I've been to the yoga class this morning that I've started attending. Yes, I am a cliche. that is me. I managed to show.
What do you mean?
Well, it's like, oh, I'm a coach. I currently live in South Africa, spend time on the beach, go to yoga twice a week. It's like a cliche thing. I feel like, if you're a coach, I mean, I am a coach who's really passionate about well-being. So it's not that it's disingenuous, but it does feel a cliche that I'm like, and then I do yoga. But there we go. I'm not particularly good at it. I just enjoy it. But last Friday in my yoga session, I did a shoulder stand for the first time ever.
Oh, fancy.
And honestly, I was impressed with myself. I'm still not quite sure how I did it because I couldn't do it again today. And I was really disappointed. So I felt like I'd enjoyed the yoga session and then couldn't do the shoulder stand at the end. And the rest of the class, by the way, could. Unbelievable. And real, like, I was lying on the floor with my legs in the air. It's very embarrassing. I look like a bug, like those bugs that can't get up. They get on their back and they're just like rolling around. I look like that. And my yoga teacher, I spoke to her afterwards and she said, yes, I could see you were very disappointed in yourself that you can do the shoulder stand today while everyone else could do it. But it's not a competition. You're not in competition with anyone else in the room. You're in competition with yourself. And as my lovely yoga teacher always says, she's like, you've just got to go with the body and what the body wants to do. And some days it wants to do things and other days it doesn't. So today it really let me down. So I've fallen out with the body today. Honestly, somehow I found the strength to do it on Friday. Today, no, not at all.
Well, I've fallen out with my body as well. So
strength had disappeared. So yeah, I was really quite disappointed about that. I'm still thinking maybe I should just give it another go. Maybe I should try again after this podcast. But at the same time, I mean, that screams an injury incoming to me. Unsupervised, not warmed up. No, probably not a good idea. I've booked on to do yoga again tomorrow because I feel like I'm not going to be defeated this week. So I'm going to try again in the morning.
What about if you try it during this podcast episode? Especially if my voice goes.
Well, if we need other material, if things get desperate, then I'll try and do it. But I don't really know how that's going to translate over the audio. You're just going to hear loads of like, as I strain to try and get into it and think, what is going on the coaching cast? Something has gone terribly wrong here. Right. On that note, things are getting desperate already. Should we get on with the topic? I know we've got a lot to talk about with the topic today, so this is going to be a good one, because actually I don't think you and I have actually really covered this in depth before, which feels quite surprising considering this is now season 7, and as you quite rightly put it, it's got to be probably episode 65, and we haven't yet done a full topic just about delegation. So this is going to be good. This is interesting.
Today is the day, so let's go.
Today's the day. Let's go. One of the most important and hardest lessons to learn when you become a leader is this: the transition from doing to delegating. People who can't delegate often find themselves overwhelmed, overworked, frustrated, and exhausted. Worse, you can experience burnout very quickly. Why is this difficult to do for so many of us? The answer is often the need to control and perceiving there to be greater instant value and gratification in just rolling up your sleeves over empowering others to do it. For many, delegating feels more like hard work than just doing it yourself. Neil Strauss, author of 10 New York Times bestsellers and fellow podcaster, states everything has to be taken care of, but you don't have to take care of everything. I really like that from Neil. So true. So, Suze, what is your experience and relationship with delegation?
Well, my husband might say that I'm very comfortable with delegation.
Hey, Steve, I think that's mean.
And actually, if my dad's listening to this, he would probably agree as well.
Martin thinks you're a good delegator as well, doesn't he?
I love a good delegation. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I find it really hard, because I don't. I find it quite straightforward to do. I always have. So my relationship.
What's your trick? What's your gift in this then? Why do you think you find that so easy?
I think so when I did think about this as kind of prep for today, I think I'm very comfortable with knowing what I'm good at and what I'm not very good at. And that's through some hard lessons, some experiences, and also, just knowing where I add value and where I don't. So, for example, just taking it out of the work context, like, I am the most unpractical person ever. I'm awful at any form of like DIY. If you ask me to put together some flat pack furniture, as an example, my brain just doesn't work in that way. I would just be sat there looking at it for like hours, just staring. I wouldn't even know where to start, even though I might have like instructions, as an example. Whereas going back to what we were talking about in the intro, ask me to analyze some of the numbers associated with the podcast, for example, like we were talking about before. That's where my strengths lie. I can do some of that. I can think about what the trends are, what's some of the themes coming out. Like, that's what I'm kind of good at. And I know how to kind of add value in that space. So anything DIY related or putting flat pack furniture together, I'm like, Dad, or I'm like, Steve, my husband, can you please help me? So I suppose I'm just very comfortable knowing myself and knowing where I can add value. And I think sometimes that is a bit rare. I'm not saying, I don't know if everybody's in that place where they're like, yeah, I know where I add value, I know where I don't. And I'm comfortable with kind of being like, I'm not very good at this. And actually, so I don't need to control it to prove to myself that I can do it. I'm just like, no, I can't do it. I
think that's such a key point in this, actually, which is that recognition and acceptance of what you're good at and what you're not. I think there's an element of accepting that you're not necessarily going to be good at everything, and other people are going to be better at things than you, and that's okay. And I know I definitely learned that lesson the hard way. And I actually think it took me a long time to learn it as well, because I have always tried to be great at everything. I've always got very frustrated when I'm not. And in some of the environments I've worked in, especially, that actually wasn't accepted or supported. And so I was always pushed in respect of my personal development to be better at things. And they were usually the things that I wasn't good at and I didn't even like. And so I always felt like I was trying to take on every task, especially those that I was not the right person for, because the environment was dictating that that was what I should be doing for my own growth, irrelevant as to actually what I wanted to grow and develop in.
Yeah.
And at the detriment to the success of that, and then also to the detriment of the team around me, who actually their skills, especially in that in the particular area I'm talking about, were not being utilized because I was so focused on doing it myself. So I think that part around really understanding, being so aware and being comfortable and accepting of your strengths and your challenges is so crucial to this. To then know what are the things that I'm going to own, because I actually am the right person to own them, and I would really like to, and what are the things that actually are much better suited to those around me whose skill sets and interests play into this. So I think that's so key. Like, so key. I also think it's that I think I was slow to learn it because I felt at time, well, possibly in hindsight, I was in a very traditional like management culture where I think for too long the attitude was the manager is responsible for everything. And there was a lot of that. And because I do take my responsibilities really seriously, I think I at times just misunderstood what that actually was and what that meant. And so I felt like I should be doing everything because that's what a manager did. And which is just, it's not true. And I talk all the time about how that's not true.
I think there's that age-old saying, isn't there, as well, which is like, if you want something done right, you do it yourself. And
yes,
I'm like,
yeah.
And I'm kind of like, well, no, actually, like my view on that is that I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's harder to transition and move away from, actually, when you're working in a business where it has grown or been just one person who's started that business, and they then have to step away from the doing to that more leading, and part of that is delegation, because you can't just do it all. There isn't enough time to do every single thing. And also there's no point like bringing people in and paying them to do a job if you're just going to then do it for them. Like, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, and it's so demotivating and demoralizing. And it's just not the way to build a team. But you're totally right. I mean, I've seen that a lot in like larger corporate companies. I know a time when I was brought in to do a very senior role, actually, that was paying a senior wage. And yeah, I was quite heavily micromanaged in the first 6 months, which meant that I was essentially asking to have things delegated to me that I knew I could do and that I felt was in my responsibility to do. But my senior leader just wasn't releasing it. And I got to the point where I was like, what is the point of me being here? Like, why are you paying me this money? Like, I'm embarrassed that you're paying me all this money because I'm not actually able to do the job. So this is a waste all round and you look knackered. So like, I was just like, I can do more, So it is that kind of, it's so inefficient, but yes, I do think you see it very commonly in businesses that have grown from being a single founder to a team.
Yeah.
And them being so used to doing everything for so long, potentially, to then suddenly having a team around them who they just can't release to. And I think that is a huge control piece where it was mine, I started it, I am the business, potentially even your customers seeing you as the business. And it's that I need to step back, I need to let go so that this can actually continue to grow successfully and I don't suffocate it. But I do think a lot of founders really struggle with that. It's often the reason why startups fail, because they grow so quick, but they don't create the structure to support it.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I was
when
going
do
to
you
say, like,
no, you carry on.
I was gonna say I feel like I have experienced that as well. So in working with some people who are like founders, who I coach, actually, I've experienced them being like, I know I need to let go of some stuff, but I just can't when it actually comes to it, I just can't bring myself to let it go and to delegate it to that person. And that really does come back to, I think, what we said at the start around that kind of control element of wanting just to kind of control some of that as much as possible. But it is really, really tricky. And actually, I'm just thinking about it because, my business is growing, and hopefully I'll get to a point where I might need to bring some people in to help me. And actually, how would I feel about it? Because I have literally grown it from scratch. I've built it from scratch.
Yeah.
So how would I feel in that situation? Probably feel something similar. Even though I'm saying at the start, I've got a good relationship with delegation. I'm like, yeah, off you go. Would I in that situation? Don't know. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah. See, I think because I've had experiences both sides. I think I know when I started to delegate more, engage and involve people more around me, utilize their skills and celebrate and recognize them in doing so, that's when I think I evolved the most as a manager and then into a leader of people. And I started to really see the benefits of doing it. Not just in terms of how I felt and the pressure it took off me, but the reward I got seeing other people around me enjoying their jobs more, growing more, contributing more. Like the whole team just, really acted so much more effectively, and it felt like a team because everyone was pulling their weight and contributing, rather than it being so heavily weighted to any one particular person, or me for that matter. And I think, I do think the culture you're in is so key to this. And obviously, if you're a founder, I think you do have to think about this in terms of the culture you want to create, because I had some great role models of this, and it was those that I think I utilized to teach me a different way and to act more like, and got some good feedback as well around, if you tried this more, you would be able to do this, and they would be able to grow as well because you're challenging them and you're all growing together. And I was like, oh yeah, that does. But I think there is the emotional connection to whatever you're doing that stops you from letting go. There is that control element, but I think I can do it better, or the concern of, but will they do it in the way that I want? Which I do think at times you do have to let go of, because actually your way may not be the only way, and that is okay. And you do have to get over your ego to recognize that. That's what helps with the inclusivity, and that's when creativity really flies, because you're involving loads of different people's ideas and techniques and styles. So it's only a benefit, actually. And I think it's also that whole trust piece as well, isn't it? I think to delegate means trusting other people. So, that phrase that you said, I think it's a load of tosh. So, and for me, that just screams, I don't trust anybody.
Yeah, agreed.
And again, I think if that's the case, if there's no trust, if you don't feel able to trust those around you to delegate, what else is that absence of trust doing to the team? Because that's not great. That says there's other problems going on as well. So yeah, it is an interesting one. So when do you think it's appropriate to delegate, and when do you think it's not? Do you think there's the flip side? Because I know we're talking about we should delegate more, and there's loads of benefits to delegating, but is there a time when you don't delegate?
Well, you could say, going back to my DIY example, like, Susie, you need to learn some of those skills and kind of get your brain into that place where you can tackle some of these tasks, like putting some furniture together or building something.
Well, especially if Steve's like, seriously, Susie, I don't have the time and I can't be bothered. And maybe I don't want to do this because I'm no good at DIY either. Maybe that's when you delegate, because Steve is literally getting ready to walk out.
So, you could argue in that point, if you were Steve, you could argue, Susie, you need to learn these skills. You need to, continue to grow and develop as a person. And we're coaches, so we're big advocates of continuing to grow and develop. maybe not in
you
this
want
skill
to.
set. Yeah. So, going back to that example, I maybe, should put myself in a situation where I need to do that and I need to learn it for myself rather than just being like, I can't do this, I'm just going to delegate it to somebody else who can. So I think there are situations where you do just need to check, I think, in with yourself and with the other person around actually, what is the intent? What is the objective behind me delegating this? Am I delegating this because I just can't be bothered and this is not something that I want to do? And so I'm just passing it off. Or actually, am I delegating this because it's going to benefit the other person in the sense of actually it'll help them grow and develop their skills, and actually they've got capacity and the workload to kind of do this and they're going to enjoy it. So you've got to check yourself, I think, around what is the objective and the intent behind it, and then see kind of where you get to. I think when you've got someone there who's literally like, this is what I know, this is what I'm really good at, this is where my expertise lies, I enjoy it, I get energy from it, I'm really passionate about it, and they're literally kind of chomping at the bit to kind of support and help, then you delegate 100% because you can learn stuff from them. And it's a two-way conversation, and it's not just about passing stuff off, it's about that two-way conversation and that dialogue and that adult to adult conversation. But when you don't delegate, in my experience, is when that person is perhaps already at capacity, isn't going to get enjoyment and fulfillment from whatever it is that you're going to ask them to do, and it's not going to build trust, it's not going to build engagement, it's not going to encourage creativity, it's just because something needs to be done. That's when you really need to ask yourself, can I just do this and kind of protect those around me as well?
Yeah, I totally agree. So I think we've talked about this a little bit already, but just to give it some further focus, what stops us from delegating and why?
So in my experience, in taking it back into a work context, I think the fear of failure plays quite a big part in this. That fear of it not going right and that fear of it not being perfect. We've talked about perfectionism in previous episodes.
Yeah.
But I think that does run through a lot of our thinking around why we don't delegate something, because we don't want it to not be successful. We don't want it to fail. And so we hold it back. We hold ourselves back. I think, well, I'll do it then because I know that it'll be done right. It will be done to the standard and to the level that it needs to be done in order to be successful or to be achieved or whatever it might be. But actually it's about thinking, does that serve us? Does that give us service in a positive way by doing that? And the control element as well. I mean, we have touched upon it, but that control of being in charge, of knowing the ins and outs, knowing that certain things have been checked or certain processes have been followed or certain actions have been complete, it all then recenters back on ourselves rather than thinking about actually the broader picture and thinking about other people. So I think what stops us delegating is that we start really focusing in on our own fears, our own need for control, our own kind of being scared of failure. That's our own beliefs and our own judgments, and that's what holds us back. We actually hold ourselves back in that situation.
I agree. I think as well, it's that there's an element of, we do not hold value to the process of delegation in the first place to then support ourselves to do it. So we're too focused in on the task and the here and now, and I think we get too fixated on just getting it done. I think there are a lot of people out there who don't delegate because they are obsessed with lists and getting stuff ticked off, and they base and, if you like, structure their whole day and productivity around that. which means they just crack on with every task as quickly as they can in the way that they think works best for them. And then that way they can shut the book at the end of the day and go, I did all these things. But it's so narrow that what they miss is all the benefits and the wider picture of what could have happened if they chose to delegate certain things, both for themselves and for the team and everyone else. So I think it's a misdirection of prioritization.
Yeah. And again, it's about themselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about their fulfillment of being able to close that book at the end of every working day and being like, oh, this is what I did. This is what, I've achieved. And don't get me wrong, there's absolutely an element of that. There is an importance in being able to show your performance and your delivery. Of course there is. But I think to your point, it's bigger than that. It's wider than that. In order to kind of, get the best result that you possibly can, is about how do you involve others, if you, especially if you don't have that skill set. So again, going back to my DIY example, my skill set is literally zero. Like, I have no skills.
Oh, that is such a load of rubbish. What are you talking about? You've got no skills.
No, in the DIY example.
Oh, the DIY example. I think you just said no skills whatsoever. I was like, no, that's not true.
No, in the DIY example, I literally, like, honestly, I feel like I need to you need to film me putting some fat pat furniture together.
Well, it could be entertaining.
It could be very entertaining. I will just sit there on the floor and be like, I don't know how, like, what? Like, my brain will just melt down and that will be it, and it will shut down. So, that is where I absolutely need to, I'm not scared of that failure right there.
Yeah, but I think this is when it comes down to, I do think, there's a difference between saying I have the skills, I don't have the skills, and I enjoy doing that and I don't. I know people who don't have the skills, but they enjoy doing it, so they give it a crack anyway. Yeah, but that's different. The things I avoid doing is not necessarily because I don't have the skills. I also don't enjoy doing them. So in a work context, there are always going to be those scenarios where, unfortunately, it's a bit tough shit because it's a part of your job. So I do think there are times when you have to accept that if they are part of your role, if it is part of your role and responsibility, and it really is something you should be doing because of that, then get on and do it, and perhaps not always delegate it. Because I do think that's where you can then start to really undermine your reputation and the perception of you within your team, because
and the trust.
Yes, because you'll be seen as that person who's like, oh, he always palms that part of his job off. And that's how it gets viewed. So I do think, look, there's always a balance with all these things, but I think you have to be careful with things like that, which is why it's right, as you said, to just check in on yourself and go, why am I delegating this? And should I be delegating it? Or actually, is it my turn to do this? Because quite rightly, to your point, the team is focused on other things. And actually me now palming this off, me delegating this to somebody else is a distraction away from what actually is a priority, or actually I've already delegated to them something. So I need to just be careful to then not overwhelm them or confuse what is important to be done. So I think that's correct. So on that note then, what are your top tips for delegating better?
Well, I think building off that last point then, like, not everything can be and should be delegated.
Yeah.
So I think it's about, checking in with yourself around the intent behind that delegation and the objective behind it. But also, if you find this really difficult to do, when you're listening to this now and you're thinking like, I get it, Susie and Lisa, what you said, but in practice, I find this really challenging. How do I even do it? I would say start small.
Yeah.
So start small. So just think about a few small things that maybe don't have massive consequences, and practice letting go of those things to others and delegating them and empowering other people to focus on them, so that you start to build an awareness for yourself around perhaps what can be delegated, but also you start to build an awareness for yourself around the impact of that, and hopefully creating a positive impact, so that then you can perhaps move on to something that's perhaps a little bit more sizable that you delegate. So start small and practice letting go. That's my kind of first top tip.
Cool.
I think the other thing as well is, we touched upon it before, but just like looking at people's strengths and playing to them and utilizing them to help. And thinking about, actually, how does that complement me and my skill set, but also how does that complement me in terms of what I enjoy doing, to your point, and what I don't enjoy doing. But with the caveat that we're not just passing stuff off here, like that's not what we're recommending, but having a two-way conversation with that person or that team around the objective behind that delegation and what their thoughts on it. So yeah, just looking at others' strengths and thinking about how you might be able to utilize them.
Yes.
And then finally, the other top tip I'd say is, it's a bit more intangible, but if you do delegate, then just kind of be patient and allow people the time and the space to focus in on something without perhaps like constant interruption or constant checking in on them or making them feel a bit smothered or getting involved. Like, resist that temptation to get involved. Like, just be patient and kind of see where they get to, and then, you know, praise them if they've done a great job, thank them, and just think about how you like keep that communication alive as well. So yeah, just thinking about, I think, how you've got to then kind of hold yourself accountable once you've delegated.
Yeah.
So they would be my top tips.
Fabulous. I think if you've got an issue with doing this, I love the start small if this is tricky. I also think if you know that you struggle to let go and it's related to any concerns as to how it's going to be done, and, you know, potentially around that, knowing that you have a standard or an expectation, I would share the standards and expectations with the person you've delegated to. You know, really engage them to understand what it is you're looking for. Not to the point where you dictate exactly what they do, that's what I'm saying, but set some expectations as to what you believe good would look like, and then give them, like Susie said, the space and the time to then achieve that and see what they come up with. But at the end of the day, that means there's an element there of knowing I've shared with them what I'm looking for. So you're giving them some direction, you've given them a bit of structure, and therefore that just may be able to give you a bit of a sense as to, well, a bit of comfort knowing I've done that, so now I can step away. It's also really helpful for the other person, I might add.
Yeah.
And a lot more efficient, because at least that way you're getting closer to getting it right together, rather than going around again when, you know, potentially they've not delivered what you wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And my other top tip is never to give me any flat pack furniture to put together.
No flat pack furniture for Susie.
It's now time for Bullshit Bingo, where we call out phrases which get commonly used in the workplace, which, quite frankly, make us cringe. Our Bullshit Bingo for today's episode came from one of our followers on LinkedIn, and it is self-starter. Lisa, thoughts on this one?
I have to admit, when I first heard it, I thought, is that a bullshit bingo? That's all right, isn't it? Self-starter. But then the more I thought about it, the more I'm sure I've heard this flung around as though it's a real compliment when someone is like essentially just not supported very well. So, oh, she's such a self-starter. And then I think, well, that sort of person over there looks like she's really struggling and she's trying her best and she's juggling loads of things. And yeah, she's getting celebrated for probably carving out a hell of a lot of opportunity for herself, but probably shouldn't have done because she's just not being helped. But I don't know if that's me misinterpreting what it means, but yeah. I do think women get referred to as self-starters. I don't know whether maybe that's just me, but as in like to say, oh, she's such a self-starter. There's something a bit like derogatory or demeaning about it. Or this might just be me.
I just think it's very it's very like bullshitty. Like, what does that mean? Like, I'm again, because I'm just so literal, I'm just like, what? Like, this is just too waffly. It's too like, what does that mean? A self-starter? Like,
You're just capable.
Just doing what I'm doing type thing. Anyway, I don't know. But yeah, it came in as a bullshit bingo. So that's a debate in itself.
Yes.
Is this a bullshit bingo?
Well, yeah, interesting if one of the followers on LinkedIn decided that it was. I wonder if, I'd like to understand a bit more about what context they've heard it in, whether it's similar to me. But as I said, I do feel like it's kind of used as a bit of a fob off. And I'm like, they're just capable, do a good job. Yeah. Is this another one? I feel like I might need to Google it while we're on the pod, because I did have to Google last week. Oh, I did headwind, because that is actually Googled, a thing, a headwind.
We've Googled like the last 3 or 4, I think.
Although self-starter also makes me think of bread. But that's just a starter, isn't it? You get a starter for if you bake bread. You know, people have jars of like starters that are like 100 years old or something that are like amazing for making bread, like the best starters you've ever seen. I'm sure that.
Do they?
I think so.
What? I've got no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. Self-starter. So this is the Cambridge Dictionary. It's a person who's able to work effectively without regularly needing to be told what to do. Yeah. So I mean, like, essentially, you can operate on your own without a manager because the management here is absent or crap.
So you're capable.
Yeah. So in other words, you're capable. But there we go. Now let me talk about starters in the context of bread, because I'm sure I'm not talking nonsense here. I'm not a baker. I just love bread. So
I'm so lost.
Yeah. So like sourdough starter, for example. A sourdough starter is how we cultivate the wild yeast in a form that we can use for baking. There you go. I mean, I haven't got a clue what that involves, but how do you make a bread starter?
Do you know what? I'm going to say something quite controversial here. I don't actually like sourdough very much.
What? Who are you? Get off this podcast.
I know.
You don't like sourdough? Sourdough's epic. Oh my God. What is wrong with sourdough? Why don't you like sourdough?
Too crunchy.
Oh, you've just had some terrible sourdoughs. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does have quite a crust, but I quite like that. But I think it sounds like you've had some terrible sourdoughs. I've got a cracking sourdough down my neck of the woods in the UK. Next time you come down to Cheltenham, we should go to visit my favourite coffee shop, UE Coffee. They have the most amazing sourdough from Sourdough Revolution, who are based in, what's it called? I've completely forgotten the name. It begins with an L. Anyone in the Cotswolds, send us a message if you hear this. I've completely forgotten what the place is called. I've only been away for a couple of weeks and already I can't remember where I live. Anyway, I think you're missing out. Anyway, on that bombshell, I think we should move on. Susie doesn't like sourdough. Seriously.
Whatever next.
It's just more concerning than self-starter. We are coming to the end of today's episode, where we've discussed how to delegate better at work and learn the shocking truth that Susie doesn't like sourdough. I'm just not over this. Right, here it is. Here's the whiteboard, the whiteboard of wisdom. The whiteboard of wisdom. So today, our tips and recommendations for you are: number 1, not everything should be delegated. So when you're considering delegating an item of work, really think about your intent behind doing it. What are the benefits to the other person who you're going to delegate to? And equally, I would argue, what are the benefits to you too? But ensure that they're balanced and it's the right action. Number 2, if you are struggling with this notion of delegating and you know it's something that you find very difficult, start small. So think about the small things you can start to delegate that you feel comfortable to let go of. Number 3, really play to individual strengths and passions and delegate tasks to them that really support those for their own enjoyment. You know, really use the strengths that you've got in your team. That makes so much sense to ensure that the task gets done really well, but actually the team is operating at its most efficient. Number 4, consider the broader long-term benefits of delegation. So try and get out of the here and now and just doing stuff, getting stuff done, because it's about the bigger long-term picture. Think about the development of the team, those individuals as well as the team itself, and really trying to build an efficient team that works with you. And number 5, give space and time to those individuals that you've delegated to. So don't give away stuff and then just sit on their shoulder, overlooking everything that they do, because that's going to destroy any benefits of delegating, because that's a waste of both your time. So give them the space. And if you're really concerned about the piece of work you've delegated, really help the person to deliver what's required by setting your expectations and the standards as you delegate. So some other things to help you this week, other than the tips, we've got our self-coaching questions as well. So the questions are, number 1, what are the tasks which you believe only you can do? Because that will help you to identify actually what are the other tasks left behind that you could delegate. It could also help you to really challenge yourself as to whether it really is only you that can do those things. Number 2, where is the greatest investment of your time? So really think about that in terms of helping you to prioritize, and then again, letting go. Number 3, what are the benefits of you delegating? So what are the benefits to those that you manage and also yourself? And number 4, consider what 3 things you could delegate this week. Don't worry if you can't remember all of these, so the tips and the questions. All of these will be on our Instagram page across the rest of this week, and that is at the Coaching Cast, if you haven't found us already.
We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and have some new ideas to take away and try for yourself. If you have any questions, thoughts, or feedback, we love to hear from you. And you can contact us in 3 ways: on email at hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk, on Instagram, as Lisa said, at thecoachingcast. And finally, you can contact us through our website too, which is thecoachingcast.co.uk, where you can also find all of our episodes, a little bio on all of our guests, and also our top tips worksheet, which we've got for every single season we've done. So there's 6 worksheets on there. It's free for you to download. And that is a summary of all of our top tips from every episode we've ever done. 63, I think, is included within those, as we mentioned before.
That is correct.
Check it out. It's a free resource for you all to download and help you.
Your support helps more than you know. So if you like what you've heard today and would like to help us grow this podcast and join our CBB community, then leave us a review on the Apple Podcast app. You have no idea how important these are. Hit subscribe wherever you listen and give us a follow on our Instagram page at The Coaching Cast, which is where, as we've already said, we regularly post tips and behind the scenes hilarity. Well, we find it funny now. Don't forget, you can also watch each episode on our YouTube channel. Again, you search using The Coaching Cast. If you don't know what this podcast is called by now, I really do question whether you've listened. Finally, we both love music and we use it to motivate and energize us. So we like to finish each episode with our personal song recommendation, giving you positivity and energy as you launch into your next meeting. Now, for this particular season, I have really selected a random choice of tracks, which for those of you who listen regularly will probably think that's the same as every season. But I really do think I've gone eclectic this time. So to start with, my first recommendation for this season is Shake Your Groove Thing by Peaches and Herb. It is a tune. I feel like I've only just recently rediscovered this. Anyway, I love it.
It is a tune.
It's so good, isn't it? I wish we could play it. Obviously, for licensing reasons and not being able to afford any of those sorts of things, we're not able to. But yes, it is such a tune. So thanks for listening. Go stick that track on. And remember, CBBs, you've got this.